Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Coming up next, condom distribution in Moco public schools, time off from high school to rally, David Trone and the race in the 6th, and is Maryland purple, blue, or red? We are joined today by an astute panel of political insiders, education activist Cynthia Rubenstein, Evan Young, Maryland Young Republican National Committeeman, Maryland political consultant Sean Winkler, and former Democratic Majority Leader John Hurson. Stay tuned for these topics and more. Welcome back. Last month, the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services announced that it would distribute condoms at 4 school wellness centers in Northwood, Wheaton, Gaithersburg, and Watkins Mills High School. This week, the school board expanded the program to include all public high schools. Cynthia, school board member Rebecca Swindrowski stated that providing condoms presents an important opportunity to expand the scope of sexual education in high schools. Was this the right decision?
Absolutely, and just in time, there is an epidemic in Montgomery County high schools with chlamydia and gonorrhea among the school population, and this is an opportunity for students to come to school nurses, get some education on sexual behavior and health, and preventative measures with condoms.
Well, Evan, details of the distribution have not been finalized, but it appears to be a logical response to a Maryland Department of Health report that shows a rise in sexually transmitted diseases, as Cynthia alluded to, including gonorrhea and chlamydia, with disproportionately high rates in teenagers of color and low-income families. Should MCPS expand the program to middle schools?
No, we should absolutely not be giving 11-year-olds condoms in schools. And we're not even talking about the high schools where you have a 17, 18-year-old, that's a bit different. But here we're talking about 12-year-olds who are even less emotionally developed, even less psychologically developed, and now we're potentially, even if they weren't thinking about it before, very irresponsible and impressionable 11 and 12-year-old children might go take risks now that they weren't thinking about before. And if the argument's just, well, kids are going to do it anyway, teenagers are going to do it anyway, well then we might as well give them Bud Light at lunch because teenagers are going to drink.
Well, what I find interesting is that the lack of knowledge on the part of these teenagers that the only way you can prevent these sexually transmitted diseases other than abstinence is with the use of condoms. And so hopefully, I know that the health department was going to bring this in at a slower pace, so it will be interesting.
I agree with Evan. I mean, I think it makes sense to introduce this into the high school, but at what point do you go further down the chain? I have some concerns about that. I think there needs to be more evidence.
Right,
that
and
there's a reason
right
for
now
that.
there's talk about gathering evidence and information for the middle school level. There is no plan to introduce condoms in the middle school, but they are asking questions.
Well, on Tuesday, the Board of Education also gave preliminary approval to allow students to participate 3 times a year in organized protest campaigns and civic activities if they have parental and school approval. Sean, is this another liberal decision that makes Republicans across the state of Maryland question the sanity of our actions?
Well, Susan, I don't think we should be putting partisan labels on free speech. This is a civic duty that we're trying to teach our high schoolers, young people about getting involved in politics, getting involved civically. And I think this is an important decision for Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike, to support. And I'm excited to see what these students are going to come up with. We saw a lot of not fun, but a lot of activism around the Florida incident with the Parkland high schoolers stepping up and really sparking activism around the country. So I think this is a great opportunity for young people to get involved.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Now, John, might this measure perhaps instill a sense of civic engagement among young people that could heighten their voter awareness and going to the polls and maybe even encourage them to run someday for office?
This is not a new idea, okay? When I went to Good Counsel High School in Wheaton, Maryland, I was allowed to leave Good Counsel High School to go see George Wallace speak at Wheaton Plaza. And that was the speech he gave right before he went to Laurel and got shot. So this is not a new thing.
For the public school system it is, though.
No, I know, but I'm just telling you, I think this makes perfect sense. Get people out there, activated. It was obviously an emotional thing for me to see a presidential candidate who, 4 hours later was shot. This is a major involvement of
Do you
me
think
in
it helped
civic
you, though, get
activities.
to the point where did that sort of spark interest in you that somebody...
I think my interest was already sparked to just go to a George Wallace thing, but it was right down the street from my school, and they let us go and they let us see it. I think that
So
makes
do you
perfect
think
sense.
the young people you work with, Cynthia, are going to appreciate this opportunity?
Oh, yes. I mean, a lot of the young people that I work with, I know many of them were part of that Blair High School walkout to Washington, D.C. for rallies. And it's experiential learning, and there's nothing like experiential learning.
Right.
I like the idea of teaching kids time management. So when you're at school, you're there to learn. If you want to go be an activist, school's over at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You're not in school on Saturday, you're not in school on Sunday. How about when we're already getting taken to the woodshed by China and we're lowering the school standards, canceling final exams, how about we stop taking kids out of school to go protest?
Okay.
And
Well,
the same,
I
the
think
same
they better
people.
have their math
Okay.
homework done before they go.
Okay, John,
It's an
I agree
absence.
on
They won't be there
that.
to
We'll
do it in
be
the
right
first
back
place.
after this short break. Stay tuned. In June, David Trone announced he had cancer and went on to win the Democratic primary a few days later. On Tuesday, he had a kidney removed, and a campaign statement asserted that he was home resting and would be back on the campaign trail soon. Evan, will this surgery have an effect on his race with Ami Hober in the 6th congressional race?
In a normal race, just a standard congressional race, it would make a big difference. Obviously, a major party nominee has cancer in the middle of the race a few weeks before the election, it would. In this specific case, I don't think it does, because this has been affecting him since before the primary. He found out the day before the Democrat primary, the test confirmed that he had cancer, and he really has not been very actively campaigning since then. He's been at some events, but many community events, parades, fairs, things like that, he hasn't been there. His staff has, but he hasn't. So if his recovery is just more of him not physically being out there, then it doesn't make too much of a difference.
So, Cynthia, Governor Hogan's battle with cancer endeared him to the voters of Maryland. Might this actually improve Trone's chances of winning?
Well, as Evan said, if and when he returns to the campaign trail, vibrant, looking well, and
Bald.
speaking well, even though bald, because Hogan was bald too, and that was endearing, the cue ball head. So it is possible, but he has to prove that he has good vigor on the campaign trail.
What are you hearing? I'll look on the Republican side first about how the race is going. If it were held today, who would get it, Evan?
Well, that's a very good question, because with Governor Hogan's popularity, and he's endorsed Ami Hober, so it definitely helps her. And she has the benefit of, when she ran in 2016, she got 41%, but that was with a very unpopular Donald Trump at the top of the ticket and an incumbent in John Delaney. This time it's an open seat where the top of the ticket is
So what do you say?
popular.
What are you saying?
I like her chance. Ami Hober's going to be our next congresswoman.
What do you
That's
think,
what I'm
John?
saying.
I think it's close. I mean, I agree with Evan.
Okay,
I
we-
know
we
more
only
about
got 2
West.
seconds.
I know more about Western Maryland than any Democrat should, and I think there's a possibility.
Okay, what do you think?
I think it has no effect on the race. I mean, I think Trone in a landslide, this environment is very pro-democratic. This is not 16, this is
What
not
do you
2014.
think, Cynthia?
I think I favor the Democrat succeeding in this race.
I do too, but I'm just.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to expand on just this race and go on to the next part. Much has been said in the last few weeks about the possible electoral outcomes on November 6th. A rainbow of colors, red, blue, and purple, dot the map. Pundits and polls alike seem to believe that Democrats will likely gain seats everywhere, with discussions centering around the president. Bob Woodward's book, the New York Times editorial, and now Manafort's cooperation today places a shadow over the White House, and the supposed gut reaction of voters will make it more likely that Democrats will be victorious. John, on top of Trump's woes, President Barack Obama entered the campaign fray last week and has been critical of the Trump presidency and policies, and has encouraged millennials, seniors, independents, and even Republicans to vote for Democrats in November. I might add also that he talks about doing so while praising Senator John McCain. If Obama comes to a state like Maryland, does this improve the odds for candidates like Ben Jealous?
I think it depends on the state. I think Maryland is a good place for him to come to improve the Democrats' chances. I don't think going to certain states is going to, it rallies the other side as much as it rallies the Democratic side. So, but in Maryland, I think Ben Jealous could be really helped by a visit of Barack Obama. Because we need to turn out Democrats in this state to beat Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan's very popular. So the question is whether, the whole question in Maryland is Democratic turnout. That's it. There's no other issue here.
And millennials have, what is it, a plus 50 or something aimed towards Democrats. So
Yeah.
the thing is, if he were able to come
smartest
here
group.
or in any other state and encourage young people to vote. And I'm intrigued by what he says to independents and Republicans. But Evan, if Donald Trump came to Maryland, could he actually impair Larry Hogan's reelection bid and the odds of other Republicans?
Larry
of losing?
Hogan's, no. I think federal races, the congressional races, the Senate races, that absolutely would hurt them because, I mean, Donald Trump's very unpopular in Maryland. I'm not sure if he's cracked 30% approval in the state. But when it comes
Barely
to
anywhere these days.
when it comes to Governor Hogan, Marylanders have made a clear distinction that they can differentiate between the two. Donald Trump's never been popular in Maryland. Governor Hogan, despite close to 3 years now of Democrats trying to tie the two together, his approval still in the 70s, over 60% approval with Democrats. Even.
So what would Governor Hogan do if the president's team said, we'd like to have the president, take an afternoon off? And
I would assume he would tell them no thank you. He was in a New York Times interview just a few weeks ago, really going after President Trump harder than I've seen many Democrats. So, Ben Jealous can bring, Barack Obama here. Donald Trump can come here to talk with other candidates. I don't see it touching Hogan. I think he's separate from all of those other races and the federal races going on, where Maryland's shown that at least in that office, at that level, they can differentiate.
okay,
Yeah,
well,
but Barack Obama in Maryland can increase Democratic turnout, which I agree with you. I don't think defeats the governor, but I think it really helps Democratic candidates across the board. in the state of
and
Maryland.
the Democratic Party appears to be coordinated this year with 50 or 60 people across the state, and Jealous's campaign is putting out vote Democratic signs. I was told that's where they're coming from. So, Cynthia, the Democratic stealth weapon, Michelle Obama, is going to hit the campaign trail soon. Could this improve the odds for the massive numbers of women that are in the race this year?
Oh, yes. Michelle Obama, I think, is the most popular person in the entire United States. There are record numbers of women in congressional races this year.
And gubernatorial.
And gubernatorial, yes. And the majority of them are Democratic women. And she can rally the troops and women and watch suburban women vote. And they will make a difference.
Okay, so Sean, it gets down to, does any of this really matter when it comes to results in November?
Well, I think Cynthia's point does. This is going to be the wave of suburban women, and this is a demographic white women that Trump won in 2016. They're on the cusp of rebelling against the Republican Party. Your soccer moms and minivans, and they have the ability to swing suburbs in Kansas City, swing suburbs in Minneapolis, and of course, here in Maryland, where we don't have quite as many competitive congressional elections. But this election is really going to come down to suburban women, and if they truly reject the GOP, like polls are showing.
Well, college-educated women are who voted in the past, like for Trump, are coming around, as are others. But let's just talk for a minute about Maryland. Is there any chance, the only race that I would see that could make a difference would be the 1st congressional district. Is there any way that Andy can lose over in the 1st district?
No, and actually I hope that we do start electing more women, because once again, the women running for federal office in Maryland are Republicans. So I hope Michelle Obama comes and gets some women elected, and we'll have Congresswoman Hober and Congresswoman, your good friend Liz Mattori.
Great try, Evan, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to
Democrats
happen.
talk about women until they don't nominate them. But
Well,
Republicans don't.
Liz Mattori, from everything I've seen, doesn't have a prayer defeating Dutch Rupersberg. However, if Delaney gets out and helps, I do think, John, you were mentioning earlier, the district over there. Tell us, what do you think are the chances that Trone can win?
I don't think it's impossible. Again,
what
it's
isn't
all,
impossible?
The turnout. The issue in the 1st congressional district is, what is the turnout going to be? You've got a bunch of Democrats who are legislative people in Annapolis who have been elected from there, who are running again. I don't think it's impossible that you could have a serious turnout of suburban women who really are concerned about this and who really do not like Trump, and they just show up, who have never shown up before. I think that's possible.
And do they split their tickets? So that's,
Yes,
I think, going to be
exactly.
the biggest issue in Maryland, and to the
I think
benefit of Larry Hogan.
They vote for Hogan, and then they vote for whoever Democrat. I mean, I think that's possible over there. It's hard. It's a very, very, it's designed that way, from how they've redistricted it. It's a very Republican district. But I think it's possible. And I'm sorry, I don't think Andy Harris is a great candidate. I mean, I've known him in the legislature. I mean, he's a good guy. Is he a star in Congress? No. And is he a Tea Party kind of guy? Yeah.
Yes,
I don't
and
think
even
that,
votes against aid.
Yeah, I don't
hurricanes.
think this is kind of their year. And I think there's a possibility that he's not going to have all his Republican folks come out because they're kind of pissed off at
So
Trump.
I have a question before we go back to the national level, and I want to talk about Montgomery County. I was at a salute last night to Ike Leggett that the Montgomery Democratic women put on, and it was fascinating listening to the conversation about the county executive race. You have 2 lifelong Democrats running and Robin Ficker. In the case of Mark Elridge, he just hired a campaign manager who's with the Communist Democrats. And Socialists, rather.
Communist.
Socialists. I apologize.
Just a hop, skip, and
That
jump.
would be,
That would be a bit
just
much.
little.
Okay, the Socialist Democrats. And then we have Nancy Florine, lifelong Democrat, who's running as an independent now. And it was interesting because people had to keep saying, vote Democratic. But I was talking to someone who said, don't underestimate the fact that Nancy has name recognition and she is a woman in a year of women. First of all, I want to ask you, Cynthia, what do you think will come of this race? And then there are those who say, God forbid, that if we break it up, Robin Ficker could win. So what are your thoughts on this race?
Well, I'm looking at the race being bandied about as Nancy Florine in bed with developers. Mark Elridge hates every developer he ever met.
He has
And
every NIMBY
And the
supporters.
electorate in Montgomery County is in the middle. And so I don't know how that's going to shake out. There are people who fear that Robin Ficker will split the vote. I don't believe that, but there are voters who do, and I don't know how they will react to that.
What do you think, John?
I agree with Cynthia. I think that there is a dichotomy here in the electorate, which is painting, Nancy as the developer person. And I will tell you that as I have gone around the county just looking at where Nancy's signs are, they're in front of real estate offices. I'm sorry, but that's where they are. I've seen one on a real house, and I don't know if that's a rental or not. But at the same time, I mean, Mark has decided that he's going to be, the left of the party, and That's the question. There's a bunch of people in this county who are concerned about development, who are not leftists. They are concerned about their neighborhoods. And I wonder where they're going to end up. And I don't think Robin gets elected. If Robin gets elected, we're all going to be running for county executive next time because there's no way.
What do you think, guys? Just does Robin have a prayer? Be realistic.
Well, he does. I mean, the last two Republicans that ran for this office both got about 34%. So if everything split three ways, 34% wins the election, and they didn't have the name ID that Robin has, and they didn't have
much of which is negative.
They didn't have an independent running for office after saying now she's a strong independent voice after 10 years of voting with Mark Elrich on every tax.
Okay, what do you think, Sean?
Well, but Nancy's a serious policy voice, which neither of these two clowns are, in my opinion. You know, we have far left, far right. You know, the middle is open. You know, this is a serious, educated county that wants some juice behind proposals. You know, it wasn't too long ago we were discussing Jealous's healthcare plan, or what plan? You know, is it all rhetoric, or is there actual meat on these bones?
Okay, so we're almost out of time. I just want to go down. Are the Democrats going to steamroller and win lots of seats come November?
I don't think it's going to be a steamroll, but I think they will prevail in the House.
What do you think? John?
Echo plus. I think there's a chance of the Senate.
Okay, what do you think?
It won't be a steamroll. They will do well, because when you have majorities the size Republicans have had, it's hard to go anywhere but down a little bit.
So the question then is, will the president be around in January, after January? We're going to be right back with Parting Shots. And now with Parting Shots, Cynthia, you're first.
All right, next Sunday, 28 years of service by Ike Leggett and Catherine Leggett will be celebrated at Strathmore, and the Leggetts have set up a scholarship fund to help students achieve their associate's degrees at Montgomery College and bachelor's degrees at the universities of Shady Grove. So if you want to make a contribution, look for Leggett Legacy Forward, go online and do a search, and make a donation to help a college student earn their degree.
Great cause, Cynthia. You are next, Evan.
Yeah, so we have an epidemic going on in the high schools. It is of declining rates for kids signing up to play football. I don't know if kids are just okay being mediocre and lazy, if they're afraid of contact, if they're scared, or a combination of all of it, but there's nothing better for a teenage boy to do than to be a part of a football team, part of something bigger than himself, where he has to do things that are uncomfortable, sacrifice, get hurt, but no one cares because you still have a play to go to next. I got a lot of concussions, a lot of surgeries. It didn't affect me. I didn't become a liberal. So kids, go out there, play football. Don't be afraid of doing something uncomfortable.
And Sean, try to top that one.
Well, believe it or not, Congress is posed to fund the government on time, at least 9 of the 12 appropriations bills for the first time since the 90s. And we may remember the 90s as a time of government surpluses and relative function, despite what occasionally happened in the Oval Office behind closed doors. But why does this matter to Maryland? Well, our NIH right here in Greater Rockville area is set to receive an extra $2 billion in funding, supporting our biotech corridor in Baltimore and along I-270.
But will it include the wall? Okay, John.
Hopefully not. I want to do a shout out to all those different energy workers, people who are putting back lines up and putting everything back together after a hurricane comes through. Because all these guys from Pepco and all of our utilities go down to North Carolina, and when we have a problem, all those guys come up and repair us. And I just think that's such an American thing, that we all kind of share, the disasters and try to fix things. And I want to do a shout out to all those companies and their workers who do this all the time.
And the shout out also should include the military. My cousin's daughter is going there with the Army. So it's pretty amazing they're using them this time. On behalf of everyone at 21 this week, I'd like to wish our Jewish viewers a very happy New Year. Thank you to our panel, to our crew, and to you for watching us each and every week. for Montgomery County's hardest political talk show, 21 this week. See you next time, and for now, I'm Susan Heltemes.